Check.
Check, sibilance. Hello everybody, my name is Nick. I'm the owner of a music venue called the Pear Hat in the Northern Quarter. That'll become apparent in a second. I think I represent the man on the street, so you might catch more than a whiff of uncertainty here, but this is what I've got for you. And forgive me if I have to refer to my notes quite frequently. I've got a limited amount of time. I was hoping to sort of spin off in a few directions, but I'm going to stick largely to the script. Okay, how to begin? I have a dream. No. I should skip. I'll stick to the script. I'll try and trace something like a rough story. It's a personal one. You might be able to see something of yourself within my words. As I mentioned, it is a picture of uncertainty, but it is also a picture of the right to uncertainty. So lockdown is something that happened, obviously. It was a period of unreal time. For venues like our own, it was precarious and perilous extended moment. Looking back, it seems a little bit like a dream. And for me personally, it was filled with impossible to contemplate from where I stand now, dread. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and all that entailed during that period. And you can imagine, I think we were all there, as was mentioned, that fear and that everyone felt right at the beginning, and that desire to sort of go with the programme, especially if people had family members who were in a health crisis. As it happened, my father was a very stubborn man, and also he saw clearly the cost of the isolation that was the government's demand and advice. We made choices then to be together throughout whatever this was, and it was the beginning of many small disobediences. Disobediences necessary to maintain sanity, in my father's case, to maintain life. For him to be alone, and the realisation that this would be fatal, required no medical degree. On the whole, we had few options. Certainly we had no choices in terms of the socio-economic, as was and is a family-run business. The Pear Hat is a small music venue located in the northern quarter of this city, and this great city. Like all such places, we were forced to close our doors. For our inspiration, we looked at places like the King Arthur pub in Glastonbury and the Golden Lion in Todmorden. There was something about such venues, a soul, a magic. Ultimately, there were communities. And I can't speak for the majority of Manchester venues, but I know that we, perhaps by accident, but ultimately with growing purpose, began to feed a community of music lovers. People looking for a place to meet people like themselves, local people despairing of their city's increasingly swift slide towards becoming a corporate playground, also people from outside looking for a Manchester they'd read or heard about but never been able to experience. It's a venue made by musicians, for musicians, I should say it is, but somehow, spiritually speaking, if one can put store in such things, and I stress that I do, so get ready, it became something bigger, something more important. Indeed, as I watched the global situation deteriorate, constant war, poverty, ecological crisis, and growing alienation, things any of us are familiar with if you turn on the news, that is literally a stock and trade. I saw a dire international circumstance present itself, at least for the West. Personally, this is all personal, I saw the end of an empire. Would there be food shortages, public disorder, a reduced ability to express ourselves in a financial sense? I worried about these things and found it difficult to imagine a world remaining the same in the face of multiple pressures. In particular, I saw a future where there was no music industry, no way for an artist to support himself, and yet still a human demand for music and art. I began to envisage a hyper-localised future, mainly as a means to positively inhabit that future rather than mindlessly flee or shrink from it. I saw musicians and artists nourished by the communities they belonged to. And if there were places that felt similarly to us across the country and across the world even, then we could perhaps find a means to change things by treating artists right and by treating audiences right, in fact, even restore meaning to music. A community-based culture, not a monoculture, not a globalist culture, one that was sharing ideas, sharing diversity between different localities and communities, one that relied on difference, but also critically on the sharing of ideas. I felt, and still feel, that this can be the future. The COVID-19 situation, when it presented itself, attacked this concept, our hopes and our dreams at a fundamentally foundational level. It attacked the very idea of communities as dangerous and foolish. The scars of not being able to touch one another still remain. People even now are uncertain, lurching between intimacy and isolation, depending upon the winds of propaganda. What I'm driving at is that this period was devastating to us, but affected everybody. Any and all decisions we made, and continue to make, crucially, during these times are made in a post-lockdown context. Context is literally everything. It's a context born out of the fear of lockdowns reoccurring. And let me be clear and provide some balance. It did occasionally have some positives for me, especially if I was prepared to commit those little disobediences I mentioned. Took long walks around my home, began to understand and connect with my landscape in a way that I never bothered to previously. And it's fair to say that because of that, I'm a healthier person physically and perhaps also philosophically, whatever that means. Anyway, the scars remain. We make our decisions in the post-lockdown context. That means, yes, the fear of reoccurrence and the fear of the conditions which sapped us, returning endlessly, cyclically to torture us. Social distancing, limitations on the people one was allowed to visit and entertain, food shortages, panic buying, biohazard queues outside supermarkets, no singing, no dancing, no life in the name of preserving life, which I think you will agree is a paradox. The threat of lockdowns remains a threat to an end to the lies and indulgences that we had until then taken for granted. So, forgive and understand, all of us, the ways that we're thinking right now. Wherever we stand on this virus, this is the reality within which we weigh and judge our decisions. This is the reminder that we are maimed with victims. At last, I've got a way to go yet, but I'm going to try and speed through this. I come to the question of vaccine passports. Now, my rejection of them, and Peer Hack's rejection of them, is born out of that post-lockdown context I mentioned. My understanding of lockdown, why it happened, and why this whole thing has happened is probably at odds with most. Perhaps not in this room. Well, to be fair, actually, I wished it was, since I'm standing here really to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of people who otherwise might be certain. It is, after all, doubt that will lead people to the data, not data leading people to doubt. Anyway. What has been the reality engendered by my post-lockdown context? Much of it you'll have heard described by the highly qualified individuals here today. I have no such qualifications, but I do have my perceptions and my own reason. It's a reality where one can't have a job unless one is prepared to receive a vaccine for a low mortality rate disease, apparently. That's what took place in Italy yesterday, at least as far as I was able to tell. It's a reality where study after study shows that natural immunity trumps vaccine-supplied immunity. I would list them all here. I have a list right here, 15 or so different studies, which, if you do want to and you are concerned and want to know about them, please have a word with me afterwards and I'll be happy to point in that direction. A reality where people are coerced through fear to take an experimental vaccine with unknown long-term side effects, vaccine that is potentially waning in potency, an unknown danger that does not grant the protection people desperately hoped. All this has been covered. It's interesting to note that vaccine passports were in planning way before there was a COVID-19 crisis. The European Commission, the executive body of Europe, first published a proposal for vaccine passports on the 26th of April in 2018. Buried deep in a document dealing with strengthened cooperation against vaccine-preventable diseases, the proposal was naturally ignored by the mainstream media. It's a reality I guess what we would call a technocratic reality. And by technocracy, I mean using expertisism and industrial managerialism to implement a biopolitics that endlessly extends the governance and control of all living systems for their own perceived benefit. Okay? It's a reality that says that models accurately describe reality. Neil Ferguson's spectacular overestimations have already been mentioned. Models are useful but of limited application. It was the microbiologist Sid Watkins that said, using the microbiological world as an example, that the world is an open system. As soon as we take away any part of it and subject it to tests in a lab or run it through mathematical probability models with parameters and data set by the researcher, we are in a closed system. Suddenly we lose the essence of what is taking place. This is why models cannot hope to describe the universe, only aid in describing it. It's just too hyperdynamic, everything that's taking place here right now. It's pretty far out. It's a reality that frightens some. They hope and see the world and the universe in a post-Cartesian sense as a dead mechanical machine. They need to. Perhaps they have one too many skeletons in the closet. But it is in fact in wild and constant relation. Basing policy on models is not only madness, it's the very definition of political. Even with 1 million variables entered by a researcher, when compared to the infinite number of variables in an open system, the validity of realities conjured in this way is in turn infinitely suspect. Maybe I'm a believer in a poetic universe, but I would say that. Moving on swiftly, I don't want to focus too much on some of these things that have already been covered. Fear and anxiety, stay still, Netflix and chill, consumer propaganda, eat Pizza Hut, ghost kitchens are booming, propaganda actually kills. Who could have imagined such a thing? So reality has painted the idea of a great reset as a conspiracy theory, yet all one has to do is to type in great reset Davos, and you'll see that this is a concept being pushed right now. It is not a conspiracy theory. Today, in this world, it's openly admitted that this crisis has provided a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to restructure and reset our systems. You can watch Prince Charles himself mouth this to you if you should so desire. By coincidence, you might say. A reality that sees an empire in its death throes, reducing the scale of our lives, not to protect the world or the environment, such as they would have it, but to protect the super-wealth and power of a very tiny elite as Rome burns around them. This has been my reality born out of my context, and I see vaccine passports within the boundaries of this reality. As I say, all of this is not why I'm here. I'm here, really, as I say, to sow seeds of doubt in your mind, pure and simple. I'm not going to, bullshit you in that way. Let's imagine another reality. Let's inhabit the universe postulated by the media, by the governments of the earth, by our fears. Everyone's post-lockdown context is different. That's another problem we have. So I'm talking about post-lockdown context, but guess what? There's an infinite number of them. Now, I'm coming at this again from an angle of uncertainty, and what I have here is really just the kind of thought processes that I might go through and some of you might have gone through, and just to develop that uncertainty. So imagine that the data correlates with the presentation. They correlate with a unified science, and that scientists outside of that unification are suspects, not to be trusted, potentially even terrorists. Sorry scientists. We are faced with a lethal virus which takes no prisoners, reaping as it mutates, young and old alike. I try and be Socratic and ask questions of it. So, question, what is doing the protecting, the vaccine or the documentation? Answer, on a personal level, must be the vaccine. 90% reduction in hospital rates was one number I saw. Unless, of course, viruses have started to respond to lawyers, and I hadn't noticed that. The purpose of the vaccine, then, is to defend against the virus, or is it to protect against the unvaccinated? Surely it's the former. It doesn't protect from the virus in a healthy number of scenarios. What is its purpose? And if the virus changes into something else, what was ever the purpose of the vaccine? These are just, this is just sitting and thinking. This is not, oh my God, I better run this through my supercomputer and check with my peers in 15 different laboratories. It's just uncertainty. Can the virus mutate with a vaccinated person? I'm not sure. I mean, if it's still there, presumably, as long as the virus is still present. And if that's the case, then, I mean, as far as I can tell, it must be forever, the vaccine must be forever updated. And that would render passports next to useless at a socio-economic participation level. Why? Because the population would forever be in a cascade of booster updates. We've seen how long rolling out each stage of vaccination goes. It would never be 100% boosted against the current mutation. It would effectively mark the end of society as we know it, and certainly of the hospitality sector. This is all within their framework. And if I'm told that my opinion is meaningless, even having read and digested the data to the best of my ability, that in fact health and science belongs only to a cast of Brahmin-esque experts, then freedom is finished. My body, my life belongs to the state. Death is the only freedom. Foucault talked about this elegantly in his right of life, or right of death and power over life. One might say that the ancient right to take life or let live was replaced by a power to foster life or disallow it to the point of death. It is over life throughout its unfolding that power establishes its domination. Death is power's limit. The moment that escapes it, death becomes the most secret aspect of existence, the most private. All this is within their context. I'll try and conclude as quickly as I can. My community is a wounded community, it's a divided community. One of the things I love the most about it is that it was a place for young and old to mix together. People suffering from mental health difficulties, anxieties, they could create music, listen to music, take part in everything that entailed. They're gone. Fear is too great. It's as simple as that. We're talking about friends here and almost family. It's a community where old friendships have found themselves paling because of differences that become unspeakable. Differences of opinion about life and death, where some members of the community, and I think it's been mentioned, are making what to some seem like incredibly selfish decisions, insane decisions, and the other side see that the other side is making fascist decisions. It's all in silence, all bubbling in this cauldron of non-speaking, because who the hell wants that conflict? Surely that's going to be more damaging. Sometimes when I'm in the peer hat, I hear snatches of conversation between one group or the other across tables, now and again, very rarely. And I might be sickened by what they hear, or maybe they listen to me choosing to say something and they'll be sickened by what I hear. Bonds fray. People arrange gigs and get-togethers, and then the day before they cancel them, shouting at you over the phone. Like, what about your air conditioning? What about, have you got virus-specific air conditioning? Please, I'm doing my best. It's like, why are you not? You're Boris Johnson. I'm like, okay, sure. Accusations move and shift. Uncertainty. How can we trust an incompetent government? They don't care about us. Do more. Be safe. Everyone is invited to our venue, but inclusion has become a health issue, and health issues are now moral issues because of the emphasis on protecting others. It's a community in camps. However, it's also been doing okay at weekends. Alcohol keeps the social wheels turning. It also helps people to forget. I think the Aboriginal writer Tyson Yunkaporta said that Brother Booze has been doing some heavy lifting of late. People are drinking and celebrating, the ones that come to our place harder than they ever have, waiting for the shoe to drop. Thus the stage is set. I hope I've demonstrated to you that even within a world described and dominated by models and the faulty realities that they describe, that vaccine passports are unacceptable. They represent an attack on human rights, they represent coercion. That's my reading as a humble person on the street. As far as this humble, non-expert is concerned, vaccine passports contravene the Nuremberg Code, especially in terms of coercing people into taking medical treatments. This is my post-lockdown context. It's about a final inversion, matter with complete domination over the spirit. We'll not succeed at this They never succeed at this, but the cost of their failure could be potentially devastating. Our divided community can't survive further division. I don't think any small business can survive a 10 to 20% drop in their income. That's the basic projection that we're looking at here. That's devastating to we're all already reeling society. It's absurd. Because what we and others like us represent is the opposite of a model-based reality. It's chaotic and wild, funny, sad, gloriously unpredictable. It is life. It is the unfathomable mystery of creation. It's born from a world that says, and this is critical, that the greatest good is not survival. The greatest good is not survival, but freedom. You see people trying to encourage streaming of gigs, and we were talking about relationality a little minute ago, and that is a fundamental misunderstanding. Let's get some streaming gigs going, and I'm sure that's going to be just like the real thing. £10 sitting in front of your laptop, please. Anyway, in a Stasi-like system, places like ours simply do not exist. The context does not support community, does not support what we try to do to find the meaning in life and how we and people who come to our place find meaning. This is my story. One picture of countless pictures. I have to be generous. There are decisions that we all make, as I say in that post-lockdown context I keep returning to, even the stuff I find revolting. I have to say to myself, they are victims, we are victims. We do not heal society by causing more division. You'll see this reflected numerous times across the board. The vaccine passport is not about health, it is about compliance. It's a digital platform ripe for upgrade. If we let it happen, we're in danger of losing our hard-won freedoms, facing an age of biopolitical slavery, the likes of which anybody here can scarcely imagine. My positive note, however, to conclude, firstly, something that if you ever find yourself in a chat with people and you don't want to have that kind of nightmare discussion, you can throw a few points out where everyone's a winner. First, what if the crisis is how we respond to the crisis? Okay? The same people that gave us models to solve reality are also responsible for the messed up state of the world. That's how we got here. That's solutionism. Secondly, the mind is always in play. And that's one thing which has been occluded repeatedly. It's the key to the situation. That's why I'm here mainly armed with rhetoric. To come into that post-lockdown context, sow seeds of doubt into your heart. Again, doubt will bring you to the data. For now, just see me representing the peer hat in Manchester. Ask why I'm speaking out. Ask yourself if there's any room for uncertainty, as frightening as that is. We are wild, we are part of the world and the universe, we forget this at our peril, whilst remembering that there are fates worse than death. I've come here to urge you to be on the side of life itself. My father passed away 3 days ago. He was proud for me for getting here, trying to impart to you the uncertainty that this circumstance demands. He believed fervently that we're all sovereigns over our own bodies, right up until the last. He's with me now, and I offer this speech up to him, imperfect as it is, to say I won't be silent any longer, won't be afraid. I hope you can begin this journey yourself if you're starting to feel that sort of doubt. As the great Terence McKenna once said, if it's true, it can take the strain.